Hello and welcome to the Edge of the Box World Cup final preview in association with Bet Victor. Dan Bardell doesn't get out of bed for Messi versus Mbappe, so I am your host today, George Elek, and I'm delighted to be joined by tactics writer Raj Chohan and WhoScored's Ben McAleer as we look ahead to the big game on Sunday. But naturally, I think before we dive in and start having a look at who we think is going to win the World Cup and all the bits around the game, we should look back at the semi-finals first and analyse those performances. And Ben, you've got a semi-final best 11, the best performing players from those two games.
Yep, so it's in a 4-3-1-2. We don't have any Morocco or Croatia players in there. In goal is Emi Martinez, then it's a back four of Jules Koundé, Christian Romero, Ibrahim Konate and Teo Hernandez. Midfield three of Enzo Fernandez, Aurelien Tchouameni and Youssouf Fofana. Antoine Griezmann's number 10 role, and then of course Messi and Alvarez up front.
Yeah, very, as you'd imagine, finalist heavy there after the two teams won. But let's look at the World Cup, I guess, kind of more in general. This is the last show we've got of the World Cup, and it's been a pretty good one, Raj, hasn't it? I think we've seen maybe some stylistic differences in the fact that it's come midway through the season as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing we've seen is teams aren't pressing as much as we see in domestic football. I think there's been a lot of success from teams just sitting a bit deeper, conserving their energy, and then counter-attacking very quickly. We've seen both the finalists have had joy from that. France actually had less possession than Morocco last night, which is a very surprising stat because Morocco didn't have much in the rest of their games. So yeah, I think there's definite stylistic differences there. Maybe that is due to it being mid-season and people and players being tired from the rest of the previous season, not having that break after the season's ended. But yeah, it's been fascinating to see that really the opposite of what we're seeing in like the Champions League, Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've noticed is when you watch, whether it's Liverpool, City, Bayern, whoever it is, even when they go ahead, they normally continue to kind of step forward and have the ball in the opposition's half. In the World Cup, apart from maybe Spain, it's been so game state dependent where whoever's basically behind has then ended up dominating possession, dominating the ball. Yeah. How do you see the final, therefore, looking? Is it we've got both Argentina and France who both seem to sit in when they're in front. How do you think it's going to look?
I think, obviously, we've seen Argentina as well. They conceded possession to Croatia for most of the match. Again, game state dependent, as you said. I think I was expecting France to be a bit more on the front foot yesterday, but it didn't happen. And that's against Morocco. Against Argentina, I think they're going to do similar. I think Argentina will end up having a bit more of the ball. And France probably have that greater counter-attacking threat. They got a bit more pace in those advanced areas of Mbappe and Dembele, as opposed to Argentina relying on just Julian Alvarez providing it. So I do expect France to sit that bit deeper and Argentina have a bit more of the ball.
Until Argentina go ahead, then suddenly it swings around and goes the other way.
Yeah, probably.
Let's have a look at some of the the best players, I guess, of the World Cup so far. Ben, who's really stood out and impressed you, maybe surprisingly so?
I'd say Antoine Griezmann. I know he's a world-class player, but it's his change in role. He's been playing that number 10 role like you would expect him to. And he was, scored 4 times at the 2018 World Cup. But he's been dropping deeper into midfield to kind of help Tchouameni and Rabiot usually. Against Morocco it was Fofana. I'd say that has been, the biggest surprise for me is just this change in role and the way that Griezmann has adapted to playing this kind of number 8, number 10 hybrid, which has been really surprising. But he has slotted into that sort of role seamlessly.
Yeah, he has. And the Moroccans have obviously been the surprise package so far. We could probably go through the team and say he's been the most impressive. Anyone really stand out for you?
I mean, as you say, any of them could have make an argument for all of them, but I'd have to say Amrabat. He has dominated midfields with, against Croatia, against Spain, against Portugal, and 12 months ago he really struggled to get into the Fiorentina team. Was linked with moves to Tottenham. Tottenham fans were thinking, why are we going after this player? He doesn't even get in the Fiorentina team. How would he improve us? Yeah. Fast forward 12 months and he's been linked with Liverpool. His stock is just soaring as a result of this tournament. And you have to look at that tackle we made on Mbappe last night, which was just
moment of the World Cup.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's one of the greatest tackles you'll ever see. It's just the way he covered that distance. It was a real frantic, I need to get back, head all the way back as far as he could, and made it. And it was an absolutely sensational tackle. And that kind of has summed up him and to an extent Morocco as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see. It does feel maybe quite trappy, do you think? Like these Moroccan players who've had such a good World Cup, you often see big teams coming with big money bids for teams who have good tournaments and then doesn't go too well. I mean, Unai is the one who I think Angers must have fielded quite a few calls about his availability. And you wonder, is he as good as he looked in those few games? He'd be the one I'd take out of it. Raj, who's impressed you?
Yeah, I agree that I think he's been fantastic going forward. His ball carrying, especially, he's powering up the pitch. Reminds me a bit like Kovacic for Croatia.
Yeah.
The other guy is probably Gvardiol, the Croatia left-sided centre-back. He's been excellent. I think he's an immense athlete. And then also, as well as defensively, he can carry the ball out excellently well. And Messi, I know, embarrassed him, but Messi can do that to any defender. He's only 20 years of age. And I think there's big potential. He's already been linked with Chelsea and other clubs. Also, thinking back to the group stage, another guy who impressed me was Mohamed Kudus from Ghana, plays for Ajax as well. I think he's got a lovely combination of skills. He's technically very, very good, close control dribbler, and he's got that pace as well on top of that. And his ball striking seems pretty good from distance as well. So he's a guy I think should be on the radar of a few clubs. He's already played well in the Champions League as well, so he's got that bit of pedigree behind him.
Yeah, Kudus is the 12th best rated player on the WhoScored ratings in the World Cup so far, 7.53. My wild card I'm going to throw into the ring for an unlikely success during the World Cup, Harry Maguire. Come on, like 20th in the WhoScored rankings. Everyone said that Southgate should be sacked for starting him. I'm not blaming him at all for the Giroud header against France as well. Good to see Harry. I'm sure I'm probably going to get cancelled for saying that now, but good to see Maguire performing so well in England shirt, as he always does in these tournaments. Disappointments then, Ben. Who's really frustrated you? Players, teams, who have you thought has really underperformed?
I mean, you can't look beyond Uruguay. The dark horses for so many people beforehand. I had them as dark horses. I thought they've got a really good core squad experience there. They've got some really good attacking players in there as well, but they only scored twice, and it just wasn't enough to get through that group. Bentancur was excellent for them in midfield, but beyond that, they were just very, very ordinary, which was a real shame for Uruguay and people like myself who tipped them as a dark horse.
Yeah, Raj, who disappointed you?
Yeah, the frustrating thing about Uruguay is I think tactically it took him 3 games to get it right. The first 2 games, he didn't use the right formation, and then finally he realised 4-4-2 is what's best. Before he was putting Darwin Núñez out wide, Suarez or Cavani as a lone striker, then suddenly he just put him as a front 2, and he saw what happened. They actually did well in that last game. And also I think he limited the likes of Valverde by playing him a bit more defensively, and he can't do a play like that. He's already performed well in a Champions League final and a Champions League win. So yeah, they are disappointment. Germany as well, I was a bit disappointed by. Performance-wise, their metrics were actually quite good. They created the most expected goals out of any team in the group stages. It was just that finishing touch. I was a bit disappointed with Hansi Flick's decision to use Thomas Müller as a number 9, rather having some faith in the other players in the squad. Füllkrug ended up being a decent performer for them. If he'd started him, would that have been a different outcome? Possibly. And then the centre-back slots have been an issue for them as well.
What about Denmark, Raj? I'm interested to get your thoughts on them. They were so impressive in the Euros last summer. Not much change in terms of the management, who's got such a great reputation. Christian Eriksen back in the side as well. But it was unbelievably flat, wasn't it? Why do you think they were so poor?
What I felt with Denmark is they went too direct all the time. It was always looking for those long balls up to the top to the big men, and they didn't get much success from that. They weren't playing through the thirds like they normally did in the Euros, for example. I didn't see any of that passing move football that they looked good with before. Even getting to beating France twice in the Nations League group stages, we didn't see any of that kind of pedigree in the World Cup. I think the style of football was the big problem with them. They've got some decent individuals, as you say, but didn't maximise them.
Yeah, they were the team I told a normal host on this show, Dan Bardell, to back. And he wasn't very happy with me for saying that at all. Finally, just before we move on to the final, Ben, we can't talk about disappointments. I feel bad doing it, and not talk about Romelu Lukaku, one of the hardest to watch halves of football, I think, in the World Cup so far. I mean, what is it about Rom where he's either devastatingly brilliant or has days where it's going to take him a while to get over that, isn't it?
Yeah, he obviously had his injuries beforehand. He's not necessarily been rushed back to fitness, but he hasn't got that match sharpness that he showed so ruthlessly with Inter. I mean, at Chelsea he did show it in spurts, but they had a different style of play with Tuchel. One of the more selfless forward. It's a shame that Belgium didn't have him fully fit and firing for the group stages, but as you say, it's going to take a while for him to kind of get over that. It was four clear-cut chances missed, and his time in the World Cup, and he barely managed a game. So it's not ideal for him. But again, it's one of those things that happens when you have injuries. You're not rushed back, but you're lacking that match sharpness, which really impacted him.
Yeah, it really did. But let's move on from the disappointments and talk about the World Cup final. 3 o'clock kickoff on Sunday in the UK, so don't get caught out tuning in at 7 o'clock and start finding out the game is already over. But let's start with Argentina, the first team who qualified. And let's start with the Alvarez and Messi partnership. I think many people, including me, thought it would be a Martinez and Messi partnership, but Alvarez ended up getting the nod for the most part of the. How different it could have been if Lautaro had scored those goals against Saudi Arabia had stood. But it's these two playing now, and they are, Argentina's top 2 rated players in the tournament so far. Messi top by some distance. Messi obviously short price favourite to win the Golden Ball now as well. Raj, what is it between these two that you think really works?
I think firstly you have to give some credit to Scaloni. He started the tournament with a 4-3-3 formation, and Alvarez, even when he played, was playing on the left wing. And now suddenly he's realised I can get these two up together, up top in a front two, latterly using a 4-4-2, and you've seen the chemistry between them. I think how they suit each other is Messi likes dropping deep into those deeper pockets, dribbling from there or passing from there. Saw his assist against Netherlands, that was a fantastic assist from a deeper position. And then with the third goal against Croatia, he picked it up in a deeper position and dribbled past the whole team basically, and Guardiola as well, and then assisted Alvarez. And Alvarez, kind of opposite style of play, likes penetrating in behind in that space that Messi then leaves by dragging defenders a bit deeper. And that's how they complement each other. I think people have compared Alvarez a bit to Aguero. I actually think he reminds me a bit more of a former Man City striker who was also an Argentinian, Carlos Tevez. I think he's got that kind of work rate and physicality about him. He's hard to push off the ball, and he does all the dirty work for Messi to then conserve his energy for when he's on the ball. So I've liked his form. I think also Lautaro obviously is a good striker, don't get me wrong, but you saw his confidence had taken a bit of a hit. Even when he came on against Australia, he had a chance and he fluffed that one.
I thought he was going to miss the penalty as well in the shootout.
Yeah, I thought that as well. But then obviously Scaloni's seen something and he said, Lautaro's probably not in the best form or confidence. I'll put this guy in, Alvarez, and he's thriving now.
Yeah, he really is. And, the narrative is absolutely dripping off this game, isn't it? It's Lionel Messi's last World Cup game. His opportunity to finally win the World Cup. Amazing to think that just a couple of years ago he retired from international football, having not won a trophy with Argentina, now with the Copa America in a World Cup final. I mean, Golden Ball win already? Is that already done?
That is, million dollar question really. It's an argument for both him and Mbappe, and a lot of the time, you look at the Man of Match awards that have been awarded, they've gone to the most popular players. De Bruyne, for example, won it against Canada and said, I shouldn't have won this. And so if you're going on popularity, you can't look beyond Messi. But again, if he loses, you think it should be Mbappe. But we saw in 2018, Modric lost the final, still got the Golden Ball.
Messi in 14 as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's Messi's to lose. He hasn't necessarily dragged Argentina to the final, but he has, of course, been the standout player for them. He's just got a much stronger support cast now with the likes of Alvarez, Di Maria, and then that very hard-working midfield three. Can't look beyond Messi for me.
Can't look beyond Messi. I think I probably agree with that. But Scaloni does have a couple of decisions to make in terms of his team selection. We've seen him tinker quite a lot. One of them is at left back, not the most glamorous of positions to have to choose between, but Acuna and Tagliafico going up against each other. Where do you think he'll look for this one?
I mean, Tagliafico did start the game against Saudi Arabia, and then Scaloni saw what happened there. He made 3 defensive changes for the game against Mexico. Acuna was one of those to come in, and since then he hasn't looked back since, really. I'd say he's stronger offensively than Tagliafico. You could make the argument Tagliafico is the stronger defensively, but Acuna's tackles per 90 stats add up compared nicely to Tagliafico. If he goes for that 4-4-2, you want the width from the fullbacks, and I think Acuna would be the stronger shout than Tagliafico to play that role.
Raj, we've also seen Scaloni shuffle the pack a fair bit in terms of the midfield players as well. Paredes came back in, but it wasn't one of the midfielders that dropped out with Enzo, De Paul and McAllister all starting as well. Do we anticipate that he will continue to look to pack out that midfield, especially because what you were saying earlier about them maybe dominating the ball in France's half?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. As you say, I've been impressed by Scaloni's changed systems according to the opposition. Obviously, he used a 3 at the back against Netherlands as well. Then, as you say, switched to the 4-4-2 in the semi-finals.
With 2 kind of normally central players playing wide as well. So.
Yeah, So again, he's looking to control that midfield off the ball as well, and I think that's going to be important. We mentioned him earlier, Antoine Griezmann. Everyone's coming up with anti-Mbappe plans. No one's come up with an anti-Griezmann plan yet, and he's the guy running the show. You even saw for the first goal yesterday, it was him picking the ball up in that right half space area and then linking the play and creating havoc in the box. So I think the 4-4-2, if they play those four central midfielders again, that would be helpful to play against Griezmann, especially on that left-hand side. Koundé doesn't really get forwards, so often leaves that left-sided midfielder of the 4-4-2 being able to help out. So you have two men there helping out with Griezmann. I think that could be a decent strategy for Argentina. So yeah, I think I would go for the same system he used.
Do you think coincidence, both of you, or not, that Antoine Griezmann's two match-winning performances have come in games where Kylian Mbappe has been basically marked out of the game for the most part?
No, I think there's a definite element of truth there. You even saw for the first goal against England, is Mbappe drew about 3 or 4 men next to him, and then he was able to switch the play to the right. Griezmann then got the assist for Tchouaméni. So yeah, no, I think you're completely right. There's a definite correlation.
How do you reckon they're going to set up as well to try and combat both? It was just stop Mbappe, beat France. Now it's stop Mbappe and Griezmann.
Well, it's not even stop Mbappe and stop Griezmann. You got Dembele there as well, and then if they can get the ball wide and get the ball in the box, with Giroud. He's come up very clutch for France again. It's that front four is probably the most balanced at the World Cup. Again, you have Griezmann, who was supposed to play that number 10 role, but the way he drops deeper, drags players out, opens up the space in between the two banks. You have Giroud dropping deeper as well, and then you can see Mbappe and Dembele making runs in behind. This is a decision for Scaloni to make. As Raj rightly pointed out, he'll probably pack the midfield, try and stop Griezmann, try and stop Mbappe, but then, this is why France are in the final. They have 4 world-class forwards that can do the damage.
Yeah, Indeed they do. Before we get on to France, we have a look at the combined 11 between the two sides.
Yep, so we've got it as a 4-4-2, and I know there's going to be some ire in there that Griezmann's been playing in the number 10 role. We've got him in central midfield.
Always the way, yeah.
But he has been sort of dropping deeper. He's been playing that kind of dual role, so I think there's an argument to be made that he can stay in there. In goal, we've got Hugo Lloris. In defence, it's Jules Koundé, Ibrahima Konaté, Nicolas Otamendi, and Theo Hernandez. Midfield 4 is all France of Dembele, Griezmann, Rabiot and Mbappe, and up front it is Giroud and Messi.
Great stuff. Let's turn our attention to France now. And Raj, I get in trouble when I say this about Real Madrid as well. When you watch France, right, is it a talent they are able to progress in these knockout games when you saw last night, they're under the cosh for a great deal of the game, albeit from 1-0 up. Against England again at 1-0, not so much at 2-1, but at 1-0, again, they were under a lot of pressure, yet they find a way to win. Is this because they are a very, very well set up tournament team? Have they cracked it, or are they living on the edge and eventually things are going to come undone? Like, I guess, with the Croatia argument and their inevitable wins and penalties, eventually that is going to come up and catch up with you.
I think there is a definite theme to their matches. I think it's calculated from Deschamps. I think he starts games a bit more aggressively. You often see him set up with a 2-3-5. So he pushes a lot of men forwards. The Griezmann, for example, joins the front three. Then one of Theo Hernandez or Rabiot or Fofana last night then also makes a run either overlapping or underlapping Mbappe. So he does set up aggressively to begin with. But then when they get the lead, as you say, they surrender a bit more possession, defending a pretty deep 4-4-2 and have interest in more counter-attacking. I think that does play into the fact their forwards, Mbappe and Giroud, aren't the most energetic or guys who will press from the front. So it does suit the players, this strategy that they use. I think Mbappe's had the least defensive contributions of any outfield player in the tournament so far. So that shows he's just conserving his energy really for going forwards. So yeah, I don't think it's a fluke. But as you say, there are some vulnerabilities there. I think especially down that right-hand side, Morocco targeted it yesterday. Hakimi and Ziyech were getting forwards and overloading Theo Hernandez at times because that left side does get left a bit more vulnerable sometimes. It's normally tasked for the left-sided midfielder to cover that space because Mbappe's further forward. So Rabiot mainly for France, where he plays that role. But he can sometimes get caught further forwards and more central. So then it's key that you can counter-attack quickly down that right-hand side. And I do wonder, even if Scaloni does use a 4-4-2, will he bring Angel Di Maria into the mix on the right side of midfield? Because he provides that greater attacking threat than Rodrigo de Paul, and try and target that weakness down the French left. Possible, but obviously it's a risk to change the team at this stage.
De Paul has been struggling with a hamstring injuries or a groin injury, so maybe if they are going to rotate, that could be the way to play it. But Ben, even watching the game against France game against Morocco, for all of Morocco's brilliant, attacking football, good interplay in the final third, they didn't create a great deal. And as part of that, because of the solid defensive unit that we see, it was Konaté and Varane last night. Upamecano has played in other games previously. Do we have to credit France for, despite surrendering territory, they're not really surrendering big chances?
Yeah, and that's where the winning experience comes from. I mean, Lloris won the World Cup 2018, 30, mid-30s now. Varane has won it all with Real Madrid. They just have the experience that they know they can sit deep, soak up the pressure, and then hit teams on the counter that way using the wide outlets. It's risky though, very risky, especially against Argentina. I mean, Australia nullified Argentina for 34 minutes. They remained compact, they frustrated them, and then suddenly Messi springs into life. That's the issue that France have to contend with now. They can sit back, they can remain compact, and they can try and hit them on the counter as much as they want, but you have to stop Lionel Messi. Teams have been able to stop Mbappe. He's the other argument for the golden ball. And then France have the other players. But stopping Mbappe and stopping Messi are two very different things. And it just feels like if they do continue with that sitting deeper, trying to soak up the pressure, they will get bitten by Messi.
I mean, that is the interesting way to look at this. There's so much talk about how do you stop Mbappe, and I think part of that is because of his pace. But you don't really hear too much about how do you stop Messi. Like, do you think the way that France are usually set up out of possession, Ben says there he doesn't reckon it is that an effective way to stop, probably one of the best players we've ever seen in tight spaces in Lionel Messi?
I think they could be vulnerable to him down that right-hand side. As we saw yesterday, the likes of Ziyech getting space in those pockets on the right. Messi's a different animal to Ziyech. And you saw even Van Gaal try to man-mark him with Nathan Ake at times. Even that doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because this guy's dribbling is too good. And I think especially if France use Upamecano rather than Konaté, I think they could have a few issues. I think Konaté is better at judging when to be aggressive. Upamecano is a bit more like Guardiola of Croatia. He will go for the ball all the time and step out of the line. So that I have a feeling Deschamps will go back to Upamecano. He's got a bit more loyalty with him compared to Konaté, even though Konaté did play well last night. So that could be a definite area, again, leaving that space for Alvarez to run in behind after Messi's done his magic in deeper areas. I think they could be vulnerable to that.
Yeah, interesting if they will be. I mean, it does feel like it's going to be a risky tactic to sit off and let Lionel Messi have the ball. I think that's never been a way, particularly people, but how else can they do it? Like, do you see any players in the France team who could necessarily go toe-to-toe with Messi and try and kind of mark him out of the game, or is that just not really worth even trying to sacrifice a player for?
I think Tchouaméni is probably the one guy who could do it. This guy is pretty good as a ball winner. He's quick, but again, you saw even someone like Gvardiol. He's again a very physical, quick guy, and he's still got beaten by Messi. So it's a risky ploy. And obviously, if you do take Tchouaméni out as a man marker, then you leave space for the other guys in midfield. Like McAllister is no slouch himself. He's a very technical player. So yeah, it comes with a bit of risk, but he's probably the one guy I think could do it.
And in terms of another matchup as well, we've got Argentina, who we know like to have their fullbacks playing pretty high. We saw in the game again against Morocco, where the further and further forward Morocco pushed up and the further forward Hakimi played, suddenly they started getting joy, especially in the second half, and that's where the second goal came from as well. And the aforementioned tackle from Amrabat as well, covering for the advancing Hakimi too. Is that an area here where you've got a team in France who have all the tools, Ben, to play counter-attacking football, have incredible pace out wide and quality too? Is that going to be the key battle, do you think, in the game, is possibly whether or not France can expose that high Argentinian line?
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Acuna and Molina, they like to push forward, and if they can peg Mbappe and Dembele back, great, but if they're chasing the game, as Morocco were, they will get plenty of space in behind. And in Griezmann, they have the player who can spot the pass to ping it out to the right or the left and capitalise on those runs in behind the Argentina defence.
Well, now this might age very, very badly and very quickly, but at the time we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, there is a lot of talk that Karim Benzema might fly out to Qatar. He never, his squad place remains. He was never taken out of the squad. He's due a medal if France do win the World Cup, which I think you'd feel pretty embarrassed putting in your trophy cabinet. Although I don't know if you can ever feel embarrassed putting a World Cup winner's medal in your trophy cabinet. But yeah, I mean, there is some talk that he might fly out to France and be part of their World Cup final match day squad. It feels unlikely. It also feels probably like the most Olivier Giroud thing that could ever happen, is that he has the tournament of his life, aged 36, and ends up being taken out of the side in the final. Any chance?
Yeah, I don't see it. I think he's been playing too well, Giroud. Obviously making a crucial difference against England as well. I think he's sealed his spot in the final. I think there has been a lot of talk that Giroud is the better fit than Benzema. I wouldn't necessarily agree. I think Giroud's strengths are matched by Benzema, and probably he's got a bit more stardust about him as well. Obviously, Giroud's an aerial threat. Benzema's an aerial threat. Giroud can be kind of subservient to another attacker, as he is with Mbappe sometimes, and help him thrive. Benzema's done that with Cristiano Ronaldo in the past as well. So I think their skill sets are similar. I think France would still be in the final if it was Benzema up front. I think even for the final, if you'd ask Deschamps who'd rather have fully fit, Benzema or Giroud, I think he'd still go Benzema.
I think we saw quite a good natural fitness test yesterday when we all saw that Romain Saïss was definitely injured when he made Olivier Giroud look like Mbappe with the way that he streaked clear. I've never seen Giroud look so fast before, and he was hooked off about 30 seconds later. I mean, if Deschamps gets the option to at least have Benzema just sitting on the bench, and then if you're 1-0 down to the World Cup final with 10 minutes to go, you'd rather have him there than not, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%. Giroud got his chance there by chance. I mean, if Benzema hadn't been injured, it wouldn't be Giroud starting. But he's come in. He didn't score in 2018, and now he's still in the running for the Golden Boot. So if he does bring Benzema in by some miracle, then it's incredibly harsh on Giroud, who has been excellent for France. But again, as you say, if you're chasing the game, you can bring Benzema on. He's a world-class striker for Real Madrid. He, Ballon d'Or winner after all. He's a better option than Moani to come on, who is no poor player himself. So I mean, as you say, this might age terribly. It might be that in an hour's time, Deschamps like, no, there's absolutely no chance.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about where you've got this. But if by chance Benzema is fit to make the squad, then he's a great option to come off the bench, that's for sure.
Deschamps was asked about it after the game on Wednesday night and said he didn't want to talk about it. So read into that whatever you'd like. Giroud famously, was part of the World Cup winning side in 2018 without having a single shot on target. It's been very, very different this time around. He had 2 shots on target in about a minute against England, one of which, of course, went in. Why do you think he's having such a great tournament this time around? I mean, we know that when Giroud is in top form, he's so dominant and aggressive in the opposition box. But this time he just looks full of confidence and a massive goal threat, as well as his other brilliant attacking play as well.
I think previously in 2018, Giroud, as you say, was more of a link player. He had the other guys around him doing the goal scoring. Mbappe and Griezmann as well was playing a bit further forwards in a kind of second striker role. Now Griezmann's dropping that bit deeper and providing that creativity from deeper. Giroud can now occupy the penalty box more, and I think that is why he's getting more goals, and he's a bit more of a star in this team rather than last time he was a bit just more servicing the other guys. So yeah, I think that's a definite reason. I think Griezmann's role has impacted on Giroud.
Yeah, Giroud, one of 4 players who can still win the Golden Boot, and we talked through that market and plenty others with BetVictor's Sam Boswell. Delighted to be joined by Sam Boswell from BetVictor as we look at the BetVictor markets ahead of the World Cup final between Argentina and France. And fair to say, Sam, you can't split these two, can you? To lift the trophy market, 10 to 11 each side.
Yeah, what a brilliant final I think we've got in store here. I think it was the 3rd most popular picked outcome, Argentina to face France in the final at 3:00, and a cracking tie and storm. We can't split them at the moment, and I think you can see why when you look at their form coming into the tournament, what they've done. Argentina's biggest price to lift the trophy would have been shortly after that 2-1 defeat to Saudi Arabia. They've overcome that, and the genius of Lionel Messi really has propelled them into the final against a French side that, on paper, I think have been pretty efficient in their play, albeit I thought Morocco definitely gave them a scare or two and were arguably a little bit unlucky.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. France, marginal favourites in the 90 minutes market as well. Who are punters backing? What did you see pre-tournament with these two, and who are people getting involved with now?
Yeah, strangely, Argentina were a more popular pick in the outright anti-post market than France, which seems a bit odd when you consider France being the defending champions. Plenty of quality. Obviously, we did see the loss of Karim Benzema. There's been a few rumblings that he could turn up for the final on Sunday, which would be some story if he was to make an appearance off the bench. I don't know whether that will happen or not. But Argentina, definitely the Messi factor. Plenty of people like to play the double of Argentina to win and Messi to be the top goal scorer, that kind of thing. So they were definitely more popular out the pair in that side of things. At the moment, the money is pretty evenly spread. I think a few people keeping their powder dry for Sunday, but there'll be plenty of interest as we go through the week, I think, and the stories start to come out. We've got that third place playoff game as well, but it is all about the final now. And I predict that the French will go off clear favourites in the 90-minute market as we've got them at the moment.
Interesting stuff. Time to look at goal scorers now, not just in the game itself, but in the top goal scorer market as well. This is top goal scorer, so not a golden boot. So this means if two players are tied at the top, it doesn't come into assists. Dead heat rules do apply. But you can't split the top two, unsurprisingly, both on 5 goals. But there are a couple of other ones in the market at 16-1 as well.
Yeah, we'll give a quick run through. So obviously we've got Messi and Mbappe tied, both of them even money. For me, a brilliant narrative here. Obviously, potentially the passing of the torch from one genius to another future talent. His speed is just so deadly. Mbappe. I'd rather be with Messi myself at the moment. I think you're going to get plenty of set plays from him. And the other two to give a quick mention to, Olivier Giroud, seemingly a timeless, brilliant player, spearheading that French attack. And he's had a brilliant tournament, 16-1. And Alvarez as well. We can't rule him out. What a player he's been for Argentina, 16-1 as well. Then if we turn to the match market itself, the goal scorers there, we've got Lionel Messi, shortest price of everybody for the first goal scorer at 72, anytime 17-10. Keep your eyes peeled. We will have a boost, I suspect, on him for a goal scoring related bet. Mbappe next in 4-1 to be first goal scorer, 2-1 any time. Looks great value to me. And Giroud, probably the price that he shouldn't be in my book. If he was a slightly more sexy, appealing player in terms of marketability, I think he's 11-2 for first goal scorer would be shorter. I think he's a great price against an Argentine defence that have conceded goals.
Yeah, interesting to see no Karim Benzema in the goal scorer list yet. We'll have to wait and see with news on that one. Off the WhoScored site as well, you can see that if you're looking at players and total shots so far in the competition, Lionel Messi is top on 27, Kylian Mbappe second on 25, and a massive gap down to Ivan Perisic in third on 16 shots alongside Olivier Giroud, third equal there. So you can see just how far clear Messi and Mbappe are in terms of taking their shots. The bet builders incredibly popular with you, Sam, as well, and people can look out for cards and passes bets there as well when the lines do come out.
Yeah, I must say the bet builder has been a real success story for us. We've revamped it. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do go and take a look. I think you'll find us as competitive as any of the market leaders out there now, which is fantastic news. Everything you can imagine is on there. Shots on target, shots, match shots, team shots, that kind of thing, which I know is a really popular market, as well as the individual player stuff as well, which is always good fun. And do keep your eyes peeled, have a go at building it. And I must say there's plenty of interest around those markets, partly because of our bet builder, but also because our final of Crack the Code will run on this game. You've still got time to get some qualifying bets in if you check out betvictor.com. Everyone's been given pre-assigned codes relating to goals, corners and cards. And if you match the winning code, you're going to be lucky enough to pick up a huge £100,000 prize. Best of luck if you're involved in that. And it should be a fantastic final, George.
Yeah, absolutely should be. Interesting to see Morocco dominating possession against France. You do feel like game state plays a massive part in those passes markets. So I think whoever you think is going to win the game, maybe go overs on the passes on the other side of things. And a little tip from me as well, Emi Martinez to be booked in the game. I think if Argentina are ahead with any time to go on the clock, look out on the bet builder for Emi to be booked, because he does like to take his time on goal kicks when Aston Villa are ahead at least. 2 bookings in his last 2 games in the Premier League there. So it could be an interesting way to play this. Do go and check out Bet Victor for all of your betting needs ahead of the World Cup final, and you can use WhoScored for the stats-based stuff as well we mentioned there. Thank you very much to Sam for taking the time to talk us through their markets. Yeah, the third placed playoff now, and normally I would have no interest in this whatsoever. I think even when England played in it 4 years ago, I didn't even watch it. But this time around, is it a bit different? We've got the Moroccan story, you know, one of the biggest underdogs to ever play in a semi-final. Is there a chance they are more motivated than teams we normally see in this, able to set that record of African progression in the competition?
Yeah, definitely. I think you look at the support they're getting as well. I think that'll still be there in Qatar. That'll play a big impact on how motivated they are going into the game. And I think this game might actually suit them a bit more, because I think Croatia will look to dominate the game in possession with their technical midfielders that they have. So Morocco can sit back in that shape they use against Portugal and then try and get that goal on the break, so it might suit them. It will be an interesting one. I think it will be an interesting one for scouts as well. You can see whether Amrabat and Anahi, these midfielders who have started for Morocco, can they have an impact on a midfield like Croatia's and stop them from playing their games? And if they can, maybe that will translate well to playing for a higher club. Because obviously they're physically very capable. It's about whether they can technically handle that kind of midfield and get some control in possession against Modric, Brozovic and Kovacic.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like this is maybe a better addition, but I can't imagine Luka Modric is particularly excited about this being his final World Cup fixture. Is it time to, I mean, they'll never do it, but is it time to get rid of this? Does anyone care?
I mean, as you say, Morocco will care. I don't know if Croatia will. I mean,
I don't even know if England won ours. I have no idea.
Lost to Belgium.
Did we?
Yeah, lost to Belgium.
Twice in the same
Yeah,
competition?
same competition, yeah.
Which says it all, really.
Yeah. It just shows that I've been saying we haven't been beaten in a knockout game in 90 minutes, but we have before France. But even though not a knockout game because it's the last game.
I sort of compare it to Community Shield. It's a glorified friendly.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, fair enough. If Morocco win it, that's going to be great for African football as a whole. It's going to show the progression that has come. I mean, when Pele said that an African nation will win it within the next 20 years, Morocco have now, made history, and they have a very good squad to do so. Croatia, I mean, after the heartbreak from 4 years ago where they lost to France, will they sort of go all out for it? They probably will, maybe to see Modric off with a podium place at the World Cup. But Morocco probably will edge this one just on them wanting to say, well, we finished third. It shows the progression, but it's the third place playoff. I would rather see it gone, to be honest.
Well, let's praise Modric then for a second, Ben. It's 3.5 years until the next World Cup. You wouldn't say it's impossible, but maybe it's more likely we'll see it in 18 months in the Euros. But what a player he's been, and again showing moments of brilliance. Even in the semi-final, there was that one moment on the right-hand side where he did that flick over the head and then the ball across. I mean, his vision, his work rate, his ability, he's just an absolute marvel.
Yeah, and he's 37. Like, that's unbelievable. He's just...
Maybe we can rule out the 40-year-old World Cup in 3.5 years.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Maybe him and Cristiano can set up the competition.
God, yeah.
Walking football.
Yeah.
There are not enough words to describe just how good Luka Modric is. I absolutely adore Luka Modric. He just makes football look so easy, and you think this is the season he's going to slow down. This is going to be the season where he regresses and starts to show his age. But nope, not again. 4-3-3 in that midfield with Brozovic and Kovacic. He's just been excellent again, and if he has to finish third in his final World Cup game, then so be it. But if he can, still be around 18 months' time for the Euro 24, then it wouldn't surprise me at all.
And Brozovic has come off with an injury, didn't he, early in the second half? So whether he'll be fit for this one, we're not sure. He doesn't seem like the kind of character who shows up for third, fourth place playoffs either. But in terms of the matchups here, Raj, we're not going to go into in as much detail, of course, as we did for the final. But it does feel, to me at least, like you've got a Croatia team who have so much talent in midfield, who really lack that goal scorer up front, against a Morocco side who have proven themselves to be very, very adept at preventing the opposition from creating good chances.
Yeah, so I think it's going to be a game of very few goals. I think they've got similar weakness in terms of how much potency they've got up front. Obviously, En-Nesyri did score against Portugal, but I haven't really been that impressed by him as a striker for Morocco. And again, Kramaric for Croatia has been nullified, really. And their other bench options, Livaja and Petkovic, haven't impressed either. So I see it one goal either way, a 1-0 win. Probably will go on for Morocco based on that motivational aspect and the fact they've got a bit more to prove about themselves. And I think this game will suit them in terms of how deep they'll be able to sit. But yeah, I don't think it'll be a great one to watch.
No, I'm not going to be watching it. I also do think as well, like if Croatia go 1-0 up, I think the Moroccans will continue to fight. I think if Morocco go 1-0 up, I think the Croatians just get us home now. I think it's time we get back and start thinking about our domestic football again. Ben, finally, have you got a combined 11 between the two sides?
Yep, it's in a 4-3-3 with Livakovic in goal, Hakimi, Lovren, Gvardiol, Mezraoui in defence. Then you've got that Croatian midfield three, Modric, Brozovic and Kovacic. And up front you've got Ziyech, En-Nesyri and Perisic.
There you go. Don't say we don't spoil you. Not only a World Cup final preview, but also a third place playoff one as well. Thank you very much for watching Edge of the Box in association with Bet Victor. Make sure you subscribe to the WhoScored YouTube channel where you can find all Edge of the Box episodes there. We'll be back in the new year. Have a great World Cup final and have a great Christmas and the New Year as well.